Welcome back to the Blue Room. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to cut and prepare your lino block prior to transferring your image. So why would you want to prepare your lino block like this? By following this process, you're going to create a highly uniform surface on your block that will optimize a clean image transfer. It will accept ink well, it'll be cleaner to carve, and you will be free of any surface defects that came as a result of the lino manufacturing. So these are the supplies that you're going to need to follow along here, and of course I have included affiliate links to everything in this list in the description. First, you're going to need a piece of linoleum. I prefer the standard unmounted battleship gray lino, which I get from McLean's, but as long as you're using the burlap Hessian-backed lino, the same process will apply. For marking and cutting your lino, you're going to need a metal ruler. The ones with the finger guards are nice for this because you're working with a difficult to cut material, and while you don't need to put a lot of pressure on the knife, the safer you can operate, the better. To mark up the lino, a number 2 pencil will work fine. So you're going to need a sharp knife. I always recommend Olfa knives because they are extremely sharp and more robust than an X-Acto knife. You can use a craft knife to do this, but you are almost certainly going to snap the tip off. For cutting lino, you want something that's a little bit more like a box cutter than an X-Acto. So this is an Olfa with an 18mm blade. And then finally, to clean up the burlap, you're going to need fire from something like a butane lighter is fine. First, you're going to measure and mark your lino block to your desired size. The print I'm doing here is going to be 4 by 6 inches or around 10 by 15 centimeters. Now that we have the marks laid out, we're going to cut the lino. More accurately, we're going to score the lino, meaning that we're going to make a very shallow cut into the surface of the block. You're not going to be trying to cut all the way through the block in one pass. It is just way too thick and way too tough of a material to try to do that. So if you try to cut through the lino all the way, you're going to end up putting too much pressure on your blade, which is going to result in a crooked cut and also putting your fingers in danger. And we don't want that. So go slow. Using your straight edge, make a slow, very shallow pass with the blade. Then make a couple of more passes. Again, slow and shallow. Now that you've scored the lino, you can snap it at the score by bending it towards the back, and then use your knife to cut through the burlap backing. Finally, you're going to use your flame to clean up any stray hair fibers that have popped up in the process. Take your time here as well. It's better to take a few minutes to make sure all of the strays are gone now than having to deal with them when your block is inked up and they're causing problems with your printing. Once your block is cut and cleaned up, we're going to wet sand it using some wet dry sandpaper, a sanding block, and a little water. So for the sandpaper here, I recommend at least 800 grit. Here I'm using 1000 grit, which is a bit slower than 800, but it's not that big of a deal because we're removing a very tiny amount of the surface of the lino block. For the actual sanding block, I'm using a thing called a Preppin' Weapon, which is a polycarbonate automotive sanding block thing. These are great because they're comfortable to use and they hold the paper securely, but a block of wood works just fine too. You just want to make sure that your block is flat on the part that's touching the sanding surface. Start by taking your pencil and marking back and forth across the surface of the block. Then just add a little water and start sanding. Take care not to use a ton of water because you don't want to soak the burlap backing in the lino. It's not the end of the world, but you really want to try to keep the back of the blocks dry whenever possible so that they stay flat over time. You don't need much pressure here. Like I said, you're removing very little material, and the idea is to create a completely flat, even surface for printing. So as you're sanding, make sure you move around the block and not spend too much time in one place. As you're sanding, you're going to end up creating this paste made out of lino dust mixed with water. If your paper gets gummed up, you can wipe it off or add some water to it to free up the gunk. Just keep sanding around the block until all of your pencil marks are gone. If you're prepping a very large block, this will be more of a process, but for this small demonstration block, you will only be looking at a few minutes of work. When you're done, take a clean, damp cloth and wipe down the face of the block. Again, taking care not to get the back of the block wet. Repeat this until all of the lino dust residue is completely gone. And that's it. As you can tell, your lino block is now a lot smoother than before you sanded it. It's now ready for image transfer. So watch this video here for step-by-step instructions to get the perfect transfers out of even the most complex images on your lino block. Thanks for watching.